So we'll do a quick round of introductions. We actually have 3 people here. Marc is hiding behind, so we're going to have the real expert handling the chat for your questions. And so I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Phil Topness. I work on Microsoft's Power Apps Customer Advisory team. We're a small team that works on the largest deployments of Power Platform around the world. And then you'll hear Mike speak next.
Hi, I'm Mike Ochs. I am a vendor with the PowerCat team at Microsoft, and I'm a business applications MVP.
Hey everyone, I'm Marc. I'm on the PowerCat team as well with Mike and Phil, and I've got a background not only in ALM, but ALM with the Power Platform for many years, so happy to answer questions during the chat while Mike and Phil are talking.
And I'll put some URLs on the screen too if you want to see some more about PowerCat. We have a couple video series, and of course you probably know of the CoE Starter Kit, which is also owned by PowerCat as well. And so Mike and I are going to break this in 2 parts. I'm going to talk about the foundation. So if you don't have a foundation in solutions and some of the core concepts of ALM for Power Platform, I'm going to give you that foundation. And then I'll turn it over to Mike, who's going to talk about some of the ways that we're automating this more broadly. But we'll start talking about ALM in general first. And so I always like to, ALM means a lot of different things to different people. So I always like to raise the question, what is it? And I always think about it like this. If you have ever gotten an email from your tester, who's hopefully in their own test environment, and they found a bug, and you try to replicate that bug in your environment, and you start typing those 5 words we've all typed, it works on my machine, right? That's one of the things that we need ALM to help prevent, right? The goal is to automate those processes so you're not chasing phantom bugs or real bugs that you can't find because they just don't happen in your dev environment. Now, another reason we need ALM is if you ever delayed putting your app into test because you wanted to squeeze in one more feature and it just took too long to deploy to test, or worse yet, you waited to put real features in users' hands in productions because it just takes too long to put it into prod. These are all the types of things that we need ALM to systematize so that we can do more rapid releases, but also make sure those releases are consistent so we get the same results each time. And so we're going to talk about how to use the ALM capabilities in the platform, but also how to automate it and then put an app layer on top of it to make it easy for me. But before we do that, we're going to watch this dude stick the landing, right? Export solution, import, publish. Nailed it. All right. So what are solutions? So here's how I like to think about them. So on the left, I've got my dev environment. On the right, I've got my test environment. And so my app has a Canvas app. It's got a couple Dataverse tables. It's got a model-driven app. It's got some flows. Now I can put that in my test environment by importing the MS app file, replicating the table differences, importing the flows. I'll probably get it wrong. And so that means what my tester's testing is not what I built. And so what solutions allow us to do is to take everything in one package, import it into test, and import it into dev. So makes a lot more sense if we can see them. So let's take a look at if you've never heard of solutions before, how you can start using them with any app. So I built this app. I spent literally minutes on this app. This is the Mike Topper app. And this allows us to imagine what Mike would look like with something on his head. Right? This is his normal uniform, but we can imagine what other ones look like. I didn't consider solutions when I built this, so it's not in a solution. But it's okay. I can still add it to a solution by going to make.powerapps, coming into solutions, and creating a new solution. So this solution is really just a container for different Power Apps capabilities. So I'm going to do this in my dev environment. And so what I'll do is I'll create the solution, and we're going to add my Mike app to it. And to answer the question that I assume is hitting the chat right now, of course we'll share the Mike app with you. All right, so now I have my Mike's head solution. So here I can add existing components, even if I didn't know about solutions before this. And so I can add my existing Canvas app here, which is my Mike Topper app. And so from there, now I can bundle in other things and export it and move it into other environments. And just to show a more sophisticated app, here is my Catfisher app. This is a little more complicated app. It uses Dataverse for storing images. I click here, it's going to download a new AI generated image of a cat. And just while that's loading that image, just to show you, this is total aside. This has nothing to do with Power Platform. These images come from this cat does not exist. I like to go here. This person does not exist. These are AI generated images of people that don't exist. This is the trippiest thing. I mean, I can spend an hour just hitting refresh on this, but this app saves you the time of hitting refresh for cats. All right, so we'll name this one Mike. We're going to rate it 5 stars. It's a handsome cat. It's going to store it all into Dataverse. And so behind the scenes, I have a solution for this app, and I just wanted to show some of the things that you can put in solutions, and then we'll move it into a test environment. All right, that's not what I expected. There we go. So here are all the elements of my solution. Right, so I've got the Canvas app we were just looking in. I've got connection references. So as I move this, the connection stays specific to my environment. I've got a couple flows, one that sends me an email when a 5-star rated cat like Mike comes through. I've got environment variables so that as this moves between the environment, that kittygram email goes to a test address or prod address. I'm not spamming the wrong people. Security roles, schema, and all of that. And so when I want to move this to my other environment, I can export it, publish to make sure I get all the changes that I put in there, that they are reflected in my solution. And then once it's done publishing, I'll be able to export this as a package that then I can import into my test environment. And so when I'm ready to import this, then I can come into my test environment. Import that exported file. And then this will take all of those components, and it'll prompt to rewire my connection references. And then for the most part, I'm ready to go with this app in my test environment. And so that's the manual process of using a solution to take all of your components and moving it into another environment. Now, this can be automated through Azure DevOps and the Power Platform build tool. And so this Azure DevOps pipeline does a lot of those same steps I just did. It publishes customizations, it exports the solution. It runs Power Platform Checker, which is a step I skipped, so we can force these consistent practices on our apps, including stopping the pipeline if it has errors that are higher critical, which is what I'm doing here. And then what this does too is it unpacks that file, because it's really just a zip file full of configurations for the app, and it puts it into source control repo. So now we can use source control and track changes and go back in time with our no-code apps. I can also set up a release pipelines to deploy to my QA environment, and with approval from QA, deploy to my prod environment or more environments. And I can do all of this in GitHub too. Here is all the components of my solution file in GitHub source control. And the Power Platform actions for GitHub allow me to export the solution and put it into source control and release it to prod or test or things like that. And so that is a whirlwind tour of what solutions are, how to use them to move your components, and then how to automate that, or at least an overview of the capabilities that are available for automating it. And all that forms the foundation of what Mike is about to show us.
Thanks, Phil. All right, so essentially what Phil just walked us through is the basis for all ALM within Power Platform. So once you have the understanding of how solutions work and what components are solution enabled, our decision was to take that a little bit further and build a couple of reference applications on top of the ALM that exists for Power Platform. And what we've done, because we understand that there is a need for this in in the Power Platform world. There's a lot of guidance out there. However, there's not a ton of sort of material that you can use and take and make your own and actually get started with it. So as the PowerCat team took it upon themselves to build out reference implementations of how you can do good ALM. And good ALM means you start with a solution, you put all of your components into a solution, you take that solution and you source control that solution into, be it GitHub or Git in in Azure DevOps, and then ultimately you have a history of the changes that you've made to your application that you can look at differences between. If something goes wrong, you can go back to a previous version, and then ultimately push that into different environments, right? So when Phil was showing the video, of all the steps that it takes, it's the goal of the PowerCat team and this ALM Accelerator project to give that an easy button on top of all of that stuff that you have to do and you have to know. So what I'm going to show in the next 5 minutes or so is 2 reference implementations that we've built, one on top of GitHub, one on top of Azure DevOps, that actually target 2 different personas. So there's a need from the more advanced makers, the more advanced users, to be able to kind of who understand Git concepts like pull requests and merging and things like that. That they need that in order to kind of do the traditional development ALM. But there's also a need from the business maker persona, the person that's just out there building flows and is picked up on Power Platform and they like it and they've been using it to automate their processes, but they don't know how to take what they've built and necessarily put it into a source control system and then ultimately push it to new environments. So we've built 2 reference implementations, reference applications built in Power Apps that target those 2 personas. So the first one, the one we're looking at here, is for that business maker persona. And the idea behind this is that the business maker may or may not understand solutions. They probably don't understand how to do deployments and source control their work, but they want to get started with building something. So in this application, the user would go in and they would create a new project, and they would say, this is my community project, right? Give it a description to build something cool. Maybe they're going to build the mic topper app, which I didn't wear my hat today. I apologize, or my clown wig. Next time I will. So then you would create a project from here, and what would ultimately happen is it would go into this pending state. So you can see here, I've got a pending community outreach project in place here. That will trigger a Power Automate flow in the background that actually sends an email to an administrator to approve that project. So there is an approval process built into this. And that approval process goes from the time that you create the project till the time that you start to deploy that project to the different environments. So once you want to deploy to a production environment, there will be an approval in place that similarly a administrator will get an email and it'll say, hey, is it okay to push this? Has it been tested? Have we verified that it's not going to break anything in our production environment? So on and so forth. So I've already got one here that's approved. Once I would approve this email, right? So I go in here and say, this looks good. Hit submit. And then this would go to approved once it finishes provisioning all the environments and solutions and GitHub repos in the background. From here, as a maker, I would simply hit open project. That would drop me directly into the solution that was provisioned and the environment that was provisioned, so that a maker would, without having to go in and create the solution themselves and understand how solutions work, from right here, they could go in, create a new app and get started. And then ultimately what they would be able to do is deploy this. And when they deploy it, it unpacks the application, it puts it into a GitHub source control, and then it deploys it into the configured environments, test and prod in this case. So this is the maker, the sort of business user scenario. The other one that we have that we're building out right now is the advanced maker, or targets the advanced maker persona. And as you'll see, this looks very similar, but it's got a few different bells and whistles in it, right? So in this case, we're not creating a project. We already have our environments in place. We have our solutions that are sitting out there, and our goal is the same. Our goal is to source control our solutions, to push them into downstream environments. And also our goal is to get approval along the way, to get consensus from our development team that says, hey, you know what, I'm gonna push my changes here from this application into an Azure Git repo. I'm gonna create a pull request. So again, this is the persona who understands sort of what a pull request means. A pull request is in Azure DevOps or in GitHub is essentially, I would like to pull this this application into our main repo or our main repository for source control. But in order to do that, there are some steps, approval steps and things like that along the way that have to be done. So when you create a pull request in here, behind the scenes, it's actually going to run Azure DevOps pipelines. And I didn't show this in the Maker. The same idea for this app happens in the Maker app. It uses GitHub workflows, which are the equivalent of a pipeline in Azure DevOps. But if we look at our pipelines, for example, or actually we want to look at, say, our pull requests, right? We can see that there are some pull requests in here for me. You can see that we have a build validation, and this is actually in the PowerCat team using this application to do their ALM for the CoE Starter Kit. So the CoE Starter Kit team is doing the same. We're using this application in order to source control, move things to different environments, validate the solutions before they get pushed out for others to consume. So in this case, we have a build validation check. So when we source control the solution, it will actually go in and run a pipeline to build this. And in this case, it happened to fail. So we know that there's something wrong with the solution that needs to be fixed. And as a result, we won't be able to approve and complete this. We won't be able to move it into a testing environment. This could be a deployment issue. It could be that somebody went in and manually updated the solution and they made a typing error and now it won't repack. It could be any number of things, but the idea behind this is that we all along the way are validating what we're building and making sure that we run tests against it and things like that before we actually push it to our other environments. So we are about 7 minutes over time on the whole. Is now a good time to sort of take questions, Todd? I didn't get to demo a whole lot of this, but in the 15 minutes that we had, I hope that helped to understand what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think that helps. I'm sure people are anxious to know when can they see both of these and use them.
Yep, good question. So the ALM for makers, the ALM Accelerator for makers is actually out in, it's not this one, it's the other one, is already out. It's available as part of the CoE Starter Kit. There are ALM components as part of the CoE Starter Kit. So the first app that I showed you is available, and you can get that as part of the CoE Starter Kit. The Advanced Makers is currently in private preview. Very, very soon we will be in public preview. So trying to get a little bit more feedback on it from people who are using it and incorporating feedback into the application, but we're at the point right now where some of the blocking issues that we were having with the platform are being unblocked, and so we're very close to being public preview. But if anybody wants to join private preview with it, before we go to public, please reach out to us. We're happy to get more eyes on it and get feedback on the apps.
That sounds good. Now, I know the CoE is a big thing and it takes a while to install. And so I'm curious, and maybe other people who have installed CoE before wondering this as well. Do you have to install everything from the CoE kit in order to take advantage of your apps here in the ALM goodness? Or can you install a subset of the CoE just to handle the ALM pieces?
Yep. So this app and the other app, both of these apps are independent of the CoE Starter Kit. So you don't need to install any of the solutions from the CoE Starter Kit in order to get started with this.
Oh, good. So they don't have any dependencies. It sounds like you can ramp up on the ALM pretty quickly that way too.
Yep. The setup of this app that's in private preview right now is a bit involved. I would tell people to take a day to get it, set up. But it's the head start that you get from using this app is well worth that one day, because if you're starting from scratch with ALM, it can take weeks or months to get going. So we've solved a lot of the issues that are common to people who try to get started with ALM and the Power Platform. And believe me, I've been on projects before this thing came along, and I was part of those teams getting started on it. And we spent months, getting to the point where this app is kind of already at. There's pipelines, there's YAML pipelines running behind this app that can be used independent of the app as well, as a reference for somebody who didn't necessarily want to use the front end, but wanted to set up their own ALM process. So even if you're not using the app, the YAML pipelines that are behind it are definitely something that should be checked out.
Gotcha. So I imagine you're shipping those pipelines along with this too, is your plan?
Yep, exactly.
Fantastic. Do you have different pipelines for? I saw you had a whole bunch in the list. Are there different pipelines for different purposes that you've created?
So the pipelines are focused on deploying a single solution. So we've got templates that are parameterized so that you can reuse them for different solutions. But the list that you saw earlier is a pipeline per solution. So the YAML behind the scenes is all parameterized. You just set up a pipeline in Azure DevOps that points to those templates and says, "This is my solution. This is and that's about it." So.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So you guys are putting tons of work into this, obviously, and there's a lot more pieces to ALM besides what Phil talked about on, hey, here's a solution and how you packaged it, and what you're showing on awesome automation to build the whole process out. There's folks in chat talking all about ALM. They want a dedicated ALM session even. I have a feeling we're going to be asking you guys if you can come back and follow up more in depth on some of these things here as well. This is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of questions related to licensing and other things like this too. We're going to hold on a second to those questions, everybody. Chuck and I will finish out all the other slides related to the call here, and then we can all discuss those questions together here at the end of the call today. Thanks a lot, Mike. Appreciate you working on that. How long have you been working on that, you said? Over a year now?
The work started before I came on, but I came on back in October. Marc had already sort of ramped up on a lot of it, so he and I are working on it together.
Awesome. Yeah, I would say it's taken us months to get to the level of robustness and flexibility that we have in the ALM accelerators, and which is exactly why we built it in the first place, right? We don't want people to have to spend that level of effort to get up and running with enterprise-grade, robust ALM with the Power Platform, and so hopefully it will serve that purpose.
That's great. I'm really glad to see it. That's always been one of the things that I have really been near and dear to my heart, is how to figure out how to be a pro dev with my software development lifecycle within Power Apps. And it looks like you guys are making that a lot easier for all of us. So thanks. We look forward to seeing that and what we can do with that in the future for sure.